The Oklahoma State running back room began spring ball with a plethora of both Thunder and Lightning package guys available. Now injuries have led to opportunities as the Cowboys add a running back transfer to add to this Lightning package, leaving Trent Howland alone on Thunder Island all by himself.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at AllDayoState. Today, we get to jump right into the conversation of the running back that has been added to the Oklahoma State roster due to injury. Coming into the spring, we've had two 6'3", 245, 250-pound running backs, and Trent Howland and Jaden Allen-Hendrix. Jaden Allen-Hendrix now has an injury. Enter Freddie Brock. And Freddie Brock did have a successful career at Georgia State, most recently having an 819-yard season. He had another 700-yard season a couple of years prior to this at Maine. He is yet another Lightning individual, though, to go alongside the versatility of Sesi Vailahe. The blazing speed that Sesi brings to the table is going to be accentuated now by the likes of a Freddie Brock, not to mention Kalib Hicks has been exceeding expectations, likely being in the conversation for the MVP of the spring thus far. And, of course, everybody in Cowboy country was raving about Rodney Fields as a true freshman this previous season. Being the guy that ended up spelling Ollie Gordon the most as the season progressed, allowed us all to see a little glimpse of what he could potentially possibly be. Now enter this year, and the guy not getting talked about enough, in my opinion, is Trent Howland. The Chris Carson 2.0, the Beast 2.4 version, now rocks number 24, heading into 2025, what I expect to be a massive season. Is it going to look the same as Ollie Gordon running for 1,700 yards or Justice Hill running for 1,500 yards? Probably not. But it could look very similar to what Chris Carson was able to do with Justice Hill in the backfield alongside of him. Because this offense is going to look significantly different than in years past. It appears as though we're going to have the ability to take the top off the defense while also incorporating the old school huddle method on top of the advanced turbometrics that everybody should absolutely love being part of. This is why I think the recruiting has a little bit of an uptick as well. There's an excitement level brewing in Stillwater that goes far beyond just the common come to Boone Pickens. It's a gorgeous campus. We have Rob Glass. I think the excitement level is permeating out of the coaching staff, which is going into the recruits. But I also think you're going to see some of that this season. A large portion of your recruiting is predicated upon what you do on the field. Can you make it make the most amount of sense? In your recruiting pitch to me or my child or my players, what is Oklahoma State selling that allows them to be at the forefront of the conversations for the top running backs in the country? I think because of what you saw out of Ollie Gordon and the fact that Trent Howland stayed at Oklahoma State, he had several suitors because it's not like this previous season went swimmingly. He was supposed to be the guy that spelled Ollie Gordon more often than not, but the season kind of went haywire fairly quickly, so we ended up having to lean on Ollie Gordon more than was anticipated before the season started. So Trent Howland had suitors, and he had several universities basically telling him, you didn't get utilized properly at Oklahoma State. That's why you should come to X, Y, and Z University, especially after this massive run that Indiana made this previous season, and him being the leading rusher the year prior. He found a way to stick it out in Stillwater, America, and this was even before the news was public that we were going to bring in Doug Meacham and Corey Patterson. Another big indication for me is the fact that he has a very good relationship with Corey Patterson, and they have had conversations in regards to the Big Ten standard at running back. Now, of course, Oklahoma State carries a massive stick, which helped Trent Howland come to Oklahoma State, but having that familiarity with Coach Patterson and what the Big Ten offenses used to look like and how they used to be able to lean on the running backs in the Big Ten. And now the Big 12 has morphed into this league where we do more running. We are more traditional. We are more old school. We're more smash mouth football, which is exactly why Trent Howland should be able to have a Chris Carson level season. And just like Chris Carson's last year at Oklahoma State, what do you have? Almost 700 yards rushing. Meanwhile, Justice Hill had a 1,400 yard year. We could easily get that out of this team. Now, is it going to be one individual rushing for those massive yards? Perhaps not. It could be a Justice Hill, Chris Carson situation once again with Trent Howland and Rodney Fields. And now Kalib Hicks is massively in this conversation. And now you have Freddie Brock entering the equation for what could be a resurgence of the Oklahoma State running back room. Guys, Ollie Gordon still ran for 880 yards last year, behind arguably one of the worst lines in the country. Not arguably, definitely the worst offensive line in the Big 12. The NIL had to take a little bit of adjustment. We had to find a way to bring guys into the fold as opposed to paying for retention, which is yet another reason why Trent Howland very well could have left Oklahoma State. And if that were to be the case, and now you have the injury of Jaden Allen-Hendrix, I don't think we're having the same conversation about what the running back room could look like, nor are we having the same conversation about what the continuity could potentially be at the end of the year. Trent Howland is that veteran leader that we had a massive sales pitch to keep. We had to find a way to keep Trent Howland in Stillwater, Oklahoma, knowing that we didn't utilize him properly this previous season, knowing that he had suitors elsewhere, knowing that we didn't really get to see his full capabilities, especially as a fan base. And he did all of that to stay. And then we bring in Corey Patterson. Then we bring in Doug Meacham. Then we bring in Kevin Johns. And you have Darren H. coaching the outside wide receivers. There has been an overabundance of excitement around campus. But to me, it starts and stops with the resurgence of the running back position. After Ollie Gordon rushed for almost 1,800 yards and wins a Doak Walker Award, he has a down year last year. And that cannot be something that is viewed in the recruiting landscape as a positive thing. Now, granted, you get Caden Batman Jones in the fold, but the proof needs to be in the pudding. And if the Cowboys do return to the running back legacy that we expect in Stillwater, then this could be a massive season. And it could be yet another extension of why all the recruits around the country want to come play running back at Oklahoma State. This is a first-year staff. They are fired up. They're invigorated. And we have a returning guy in Sesi Vlahe. We have a young guy that seems to have everything you need to be a starter at Oklahoma State, Rodney Fields. Now you bring in Freddie Brock. And you have the veteran leadership of Trent Howland, who has done the daggone thing in the Big Ten. Is the running game in the Big 12 the same as the Big 10? We're going to find out this season. And whether it's one individual that rushes for 1,100 yards or one individual that rushes for 1,200 and the other rushes for 500 and another rushes for 400, it doesn't matter if we do not have Trent Howland at the fold, because then we're breaking in a bunch of young guys. And then even if you were to get Freddie Brock, you have a bunch of lightning packages. Kalib Hicks can put his shoulder down, and he could make you regret trying to step up and hit him, but he still has more elusivity than the power dynamic that Trent Howland offers. So as much as we love Kalib Hicks, and we're excited about Rodney Fields, and we love the breakaway speed of Sesi Vlahe and the training he's had with the Jalen Warren coaching and that tree, as much as all of that is exciting, I think we're having a completely different conversation about the expectations of the running back room if Trent Howland isn't in fold. This is going to be a big year for Oklahoma State if everything that we're hearing on the offensive side of the ball does in fact come to fruition. Now, here's the downside to spring. Sometimes you have some guys pop off and have massive springs that don't end up really being a factor in the season, and vice versa. You have guys that didn't really do much in the spring. They end up having a huge year. So a lot can be determined as the season progresses. A lot could be figured out if we had a different level of a spring game. But regardless, I expect Trent Howland to have the type of season that he returned to Oklahoma State to have. He's going to be the catalyst. He's going to be the bell cow. He's going to be the guy that we trust the most. In pressure situations, when the clock is waning down in its final moments, and we need to make sure that ball security is of the utmost importance, it is going to be leaned on by guys like Trent Howland. Very excited to see what Howland provides this upcoming season in Cowboy country. And we need to take into consideration that without him, we're likely not in the same position. And we're likely not even having the same conversation about bringing in Freddie Brock or any other running back to this illustrious RBU university. Ladies and gentlemen, SupplyHouse is where you need to go to get all of your supplies, whether this is plumbing, HVAC, electrical. It doesn't really matter. SupplyHouse is the bee's knees for all of your needs whenever you're trying to get something squared away. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete new inventory of over 200,000 parts to choose from and 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast and from coast to coast. If you're going to need any help on an order, Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for all the trade pros out here looking for that extra edge, the free Trademaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking the advantage. You need to do the same. It is your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use the promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. Make sure that you head on over to supplyhouse.com today. Use that code SH5 for 5% off your first order. Get with Supply House and get everything you need, whether it's electrical, HVAC, or plumbing, today. Speaking of injuries, unfortunately, we have one of the most devastating ones pop up once again, as Talyn Shettron has found himself on the injury reserve list once again. And really, this is a crying shame for him, right? We talk about the uptick in recruiting, especially winning the in-state battles over OU. We're going to talk a little bit more about that with a guest. But as it pertains to Talyn Shettron, right, he's kind of at the forefront of some of those individuals that chose Oklahoma State over OU, allowing some of these conversations about Katie Batman Jones and potentially Taj Overton, Trey McLaughlin, Carter Langendorfer, the list goes on and on. But for Talyn, this is really devastating. And for all of us out here in Cowboy country, we were anticipating him having a massive season. The question has never been about Talyn. It's always been, can he stay healthy? If Talyn Shettron were to stay healthy, he puts himself potentially in that, potentially, I would say, Tylan Wallace conversation, not just because the names are similar, but much like Trayson Wallace, we could see Talyn eventually find himself in the coaching corner, because Trayson had several injuries dating back to even when he was a quarterback in high school. And now it's allowed him to be one of the top coaches on the Oklahoma State staff. Matter of fact, when we're talking about easing the pain, that ability for Trayson Wallace to diagnose things from a quarterback perspective and then also distribute it out to the wide receivers and make it make the most amount of sense allows all of us to feel pretty excited about what the wide receiver core could provide, even with the loss of Talyn Shettron. I've been hooting and hollering for a year plus now about Ayo Shotomide-King. Last year, around this time, he looked like somebody that could easily pop up and fulfill that Leon Johnson style of role. We like the 6'4", 225-pound body frame that Ayo Shotomide-King provides, but we also appreciate that. And the newest addition to the Cowboy wide receiver core, essentially making up for the loss of Talyn Shettron, is Cameron Abshire, Division II wide receiver from Emory and Henry College. Had 51 receptions for 1,057 yards this previous season, almost 21 yards per completion. He is going to be able to fulfill that void that is potentially left over by the injury of Shettron. But we also are looking at Christian Fitzpatrick, former Michigan State Spartan and formerly Marshall Thundering Herd member, had almost 200 yards receiving in the last couple of years, a little over 550 yards this previous year at Marshall, but he also had 14 yards per completion his last year at Michigan. This last year, he was almost 17 yards per completion at Marshall. So clearly we're trying to fill some holes. We're trying to fulfill some needs that we have. But let's not forget about the Rashawn Woods, Enid high school product, and Tyke Andrews. You're seeing clips of him come out and do significantly more this spring than he has done in the previous years. At 5'11", 200 pounds, he has the versatility to play multiple wide receiver positions. And I think all of us understand that his development with Rashawn Woods being his coach for most of his high school career is going to allow him to eventually flourish as a Cowboy. Royal Capel, he's a freshman wide receiver, obviously a friend of the show. He's finding ways to separate himself from your typical freshman already, as is Cam Powell. Cam Powell at 6 foot, 205 pounds, might be somebody who could fulfill a role that Talyn Shettron is potentially leaving due to injury. But let's not forget about Shamar Rigby. The 6 foot, 390-pound transfer from Purdue was such a valuable asset to the Boilermakers that even as a true freshman in a somewhat loaded wide receiver room, they still had to find creative ways to get him out on the field. Kyler Pearson is an individual jack of all trades. He's the Swiss Army knife that we could use at a multitude of positions. I love having him back in the fold. DeJuan Lofton last year was proving to be a valuable commodity, as was Gavin Freeman. They kind of split some time. And we recently have heard from Mike Gundy, the reason Gavin Freeman didn't play throughout the course of the season was due to an agreement they had prior to the season starting. And then the emergence of DeJuan Lofton towards the latter half of the season was something that all of us look forward to. Then you have the speedster coming over from Nebraska and Jalen Lloyd. Then you have the converted quarterback, Sam Jackson the fifth, who Haas Haney talked about on the show. Like, he did some offseason work with Sam Jackson, with Jalen Lloyd, with some of the other wide receivers, and he's very excited about what we could provide at the wide receiver position, especially when you take into consideration Cam Hurd. Cam Hurd has been an individual that we've tried to get more playing time as the year has gone on the last couple seasons, but he hasn't just been quite able to carve out a role. And then lastly, we cannot forget about last year's true freshman, 6'3", 210-pound wide receiver Trey Griffiths. He did get on the field to some degree a little bit at the latter half of the season, but he wasn't an integral part of the offense. This is an opportunity for a lot of individuals to step up and fill that void that is going to be left by Talyn. I think that Ayo Shotomide-King could have a potential all Big 12 style of season, but I also think the ability at the slot receiver spots is going to allow us to cover up any inefficiencies that we might have on the outside. But between Shamar Rigby and Ayo Shotomide-King and Trey Griffiths and Cam Powell, and now you have to take in Cam Abshire, and potentially you could have a Marshall Thundering Herd individual. See, words are still hard for me, helping us. But even if we didn't need that, we have so many slot receivers that I think you could run 4 or 5 wide receiver sets with one big dude. Maybe it's Ayo Shotomide-King. And then imagine DeJuan Lofton and Jalen Lloyd and Gavin Freeman all on the field at the same time. Imagine Tyke Andrews out there playing with some potential Cam Hurd magic that we've seen glimpses of in the past. Regardless of the injury to Talyn, I don't think that any of us should be super concerned about what is going to happen at wide receiver position. I do think that Theron H is a very good outside wide receivers coach. Doug Meacham is obviously a legendary inside wide receivers coach, and having the NFL innovations in the offensive side of the ball mixed in with some of the old school Cowboy verbiage that Mike Gundy has even been accustomed to for years, it should give this offense ample opportunity to take off. But yet again, another reason why I think it makes sense to lean a little bit more heavily on Trent Howland is because of this injury. Talyn Shettron was poised to have an All-American level season. I really do think that there is a decent comparison between a healthy Talyn Shettron and a ready to rock and roll all day, every day Tylan Wallace. There's a very good comparison. Hopefully we do get to see Talyn by the end of the year. But I think the aggressive nature that we're already approaching this with in the transfer portal, mixed with the guys that we already have on campus that we've maybe seen glimpses of, or they just have the prototypical size, speed, strength, and ability to play the position, it sucks for Talyn. And it sucks for all of us that we don't get to watch Talyn absolutely have a remarkable year. But at the same time, it does open doors. And it is going to allow for other wide receivers to make a name for themselves this season outside of just Ayo Shotomide-King. The Bedlam softball game did not go the Cowgirls' way. Unfortunately, the latter half of the game went kind of sideways. The beginning was awesome. Halfway through was awesome. We had a 3-0 lead, and then it turned into a 4-2 lead. And then that evaporated very quickly because OU did what OU unfortunately does. They proved once again why they are still the juggernaut of the sport, and they are looking to win a record 5th title in a row. I mean, heck, they already have the record. They're the first school to ever win 4 titles in a row, and now they're tied for second all-time in national championships. Clearly, they have a path to win yet another natty. The team seemingly in their way is Texas. Now, this was a huge opportunity for the Cowgirls. Did it mean as much to the Lady Sooners? Obviously not, because they're still in the thick of the national championship conversation. But the Cowgirls really needed this to catapult them into the rest of the Big 12 year. But it didn't work out. And it's frustrating. I mean, of course, not only because you want to win the game, not only because it gives you that RPI and strength of schedule boost that you need at the end of the year when it comes down to who's going to potentially be a host or not. You definitely needed some of that. But more importantly, there were several recruits on hand that are interested in both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. OU, whether their roster turnover is major or not, has nothing to do with the fact that it is a sought-after destination. And this was an opportunity, much like last year, beating them in the Bedlam Series, in the regular season, 2 out of 3 games. That was absolutely huge for the transfer portal. The recruiting side of the equation obviously took a little bit of a dip, but thankfully, we have Coach Kenny Gajewski. And thankfully, Kenny Gajewski is more open, upfront, transparent, and honest than most every other coach on campus, right? This previous season, Mike Gundy did nothing about the deficiencies we had offensively. I mean, even recently, he mentioned that he didn't understand that he needed to fire everybody until basically the season was already over. That's problematic, in my opinion. But what is Josh Holliday doing? And what is the excuse for Josh Holliday? Mike Gundy had the Board of Regents that kind of prevented him from retaining all of those individuals that were obviously a huge issue. Is it going to take that for Josh Holliday and Cowboy baseball? If so, it's kind of a sad deal whenever you have the softball coach out here talking to us, saying that it was an embarrassment for all of the fans, or it was embarrassing to all of the fans that showed up because we broke the softball attendance record. We had almost 10,000 fans in the stands, and we kind of laid a dud there at the end of the game. There was no doubt that OU likely was going to be the favorite to get the W. There was no doubt that they were likely going to get the W. But what it could have done for the remainder of the Cowgirl season could have been massive. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, right? That's the conversation that we're having. But we're not having this conversation about Josh Holliday. Or better yet, Josh Holliday's not having this conversation with himself or the fan base. And that is problematic, in my opinion. We witnessed what it would look like if the Board of Regents had to get involved. And it wasn't a good look. Even if we may have got a desired outcome of a completely new overhauled staff, it was a bad look that it got that far. It was a bad look that RA and some other individuals leaked some stuff on Gundy's behalf. A lot of it was just a bad look. And then Board of Regents looks even worse with the Dr. Casey Shrum stuff. Is it going to take that for Josh Holliday to pull his head out of his you-know-what? Just be honest. Like, you can tell the fan base that I have messed up this season. And maybe I put too much trust in the wrong individuals. Maybe I'm too afraid to approach coaches about the pitching situation or the hitting situation or what we do in clutch moments or why we're trying to lay down a bunt with 2 strikes. Like, we're trying to go against the grain in baseball. And instead of acknowledging it, admitting it, and showing all of us that he understands that there's something to fix here, we get basically nothing. And even before Kenny Gajewski gave us this, right, I'm embarrassed for the fans that showed up argument, we also got him making changes on the diamond. He was in the dugout with Coach Vanessa Shippey. Then he decided this isn't working. So just a couple weeks ago, he got himself out of the dugout and went to stand on the third baseline to be the third base coach. He got Vanessa Shippey out of the dugout to stand on the first baseline to be the first base coach. And the coaches that were fulfilling those roles are now in the dugout. So at least he's doing something, even if it weren't to be working. At least he's willing to do something and acknowledge that there's an issue and hold himself responsible for finding the fix. Kenny Gajewski has been a breath of fresh air. We can only ask that more coaches do the same thing. I think J.C. Hoyt is pretty open about some of the difficulties that she's gone through, and she'll call players out or the team out or herself out. But we're not getting that out of Josh Holliday. Unfortunately, we did not get that out of Mike Gundy. It led to a massive shakeup that at the end of the day, he did have to sign off on, because Mike Gundy could have stayed stubborn. He could have refused to take a new deal, And we could be having an entirely different conversation even in regards to this football season. But why let it get that far? Josh Holliday, you witnessed what that was like. And now you're witnessing Kenny Gajewski make changes mid-season and admittedly tell the fans, this is embarrassing. We're not giving you the product that we should be giving you. It's great that we can get it from some. I don't understand why we can't get it from all, especially Josh Holliday. If anybody on campus has something to answer to, at this point in time, it's Josh Holliday. That was Mike Gundy. Now we have the answers. Can we get something like that out of Josh Holliday? Anything would be nice. An acknowledgement, an understanding, a willingness to fix, adjust, move, shift, more small ball, different lineups, change responsibilities for the coaching staff, something. But instead, we get nothing. And if we're leaning on the sweep of K-State, big deal, yes. But then we turn around and lose a midweek game to Oral Roberts. ORU is a pain in the wazoo for us, as is Dallas Baptist. But it's almost inexcusable at this point in time that you can beat the number one team in the Big 12 and then lose a midweek game to Oral Roberts. Are they good enough to beat us occasionally? Yes. But should this be happening year after year after year after year on Tuesdays and Wednesdays? No, it shouldn't. And we should have answers, or we should have an expectation of what something new could look like. It would be nice. But anywho, that's all we're going to have for this one at Rice here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State. You could be anywhere, so happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor, hit the like button if you liked it. You can hit the dislike button too. It's okay. More importantly, share. Get the comments going. Subscribe. My podcast people out there. You're everything that makes this something. So I greatly appreciate you. Do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, my taters.